The spiritual content of the class is actually set into the context of the seasons, because the 4 seasons just offer this really lovely template for every little bit of the growth process, and human experience can fit very well into it. Every week is a little bit of a different slant on spiritual and personal growth, all designed to not so much take A to point B, but to really allow the whole process of life to be a miraculous journey, where we're seeing little miracles happening all the time, where we just experience a greater degree of personal mastery, where we start to recognize our personal highest good as being very connected and intertwined with the good of the world around us. And that becomes part of our joy of finding our path of, serving the world. As we're in this deep part of winter, our content has been about going into that place of stillness that is so enacted in the winter season by the natural world, especially where I live in Minnesota, where everything is just pretty frozen. Nothing's growing, everything's just frozen and covered with snow. And last week, our whole focus was on the void phase of life, which is very much about just being rather than doing, not trying to push anything ahead, just surrendering in a sense. Now this month we get into some kind of esoteric topics. Next month is going to be much more down to earth, some of the basics of relationships, as we go into February, where of course, the whole world is covered with candy hearts and flowers. We're just going to look at relating from all kinds of ways. And make sure everybody's muted here. I think we all are. So, here we are in the 3rd week of January. And as last week's lesson touched upon, the void phase of life periodically asks us to release all that we think we know. And not knowing means letting go of the idea that there is some graspable absolute truth, and instead cultivating the state of mind expressed by Socrates when he said, "I know that I know nothing." As soon as we hold one truth to be the truth, we automatically start separating ourselves from all others who don't share our truth. I mean, we're seeing a lot of that in the world in recent years with the whole, fake news and alternative facts, and, everybody seems to have their own set of facts. And we feel very, very separate from one another. And this starts a very disempowering cycle of judgment, separateness, and fear. Now, maybe some of you have heard of the spiritual philosophy called A Course in Miracles, which is basically 3 pretty thick volumes of spiritual philosophy. One of those volumes is a set of 365 lessons. It's a very interesting approach. I won't go deeply into the whole philosophy of A Course in Miracles. Google it sometime if you've never heard of it. It's kind of interesting. But the first lesson of the 365 is, nothing I see means anything. Now the second lesson is, I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. And the third lesson is, I do not understand anything I see. And these exercises in deprogramming are really an essential step in opening to an expanded paradigm of truth. It's really the more rigidly we hold on to our interpretations of life, the more we close off to the multitude of options and possibilities that are just beyond our current ability to imagine. And in the absence of one ultimate truth that our human minds can fathom, there really are countless perspectives of truth that serve us until we outgrow them. I think of that ultimate truth as being like the big elephant, that all the blind men are, humans are like the blind men, and we may like grab a piece of it and, kind of get a little bit of it, but it's almost too big for our human brains to fathom. All of reality really is too big to frame in an absolute way. And we may have transcendental moments, spiritual experiences, where we have these moments of experiencing all that is. But then as soon as we try to define what we experienced, we've simply constructed another frame, and then that becomes our new dogma. And what we see through a frame will never be the whole picture. So from time to time, we need to drop our interpretations and experiment with a different perspective of truth. And even be willing to live in the ambiguity of uncertainty at times. Now, embracing paradox, where we find coherency in two diametrically opposing truths, is a theme that arises in these lessons again and again, because it actually is a very important aspect of wisdom and empowerment. In fact, there's a physics paradox that I've mentioned here in other lessons. Any of you who've cracked a, quantum physics 101 book have heard of this. The paradox of matter showing up to the observer as particles when it's being observed as such, and as waves when it's being observed. And those two realities would seem to be mutually exclusive, and yet we know that exists. And really, I think human beings are much the same way. We are absolutely one with all that is. And yet we're very unique and individual at the same time. And this element of paradox is just ever present as we increasingly open to spiritual reality. We can be the creator of our own experience at the same time that we deeply accept and surrender to what is. And we can know ourselves to be powerful enough to affect every atom in the universe, and simultaneously recognize our powerlessness to change the divine order of all that is. We kind of played with that a little bit last time, of just, as we've recognized ourselves as the creator of our reality, then we need to recognize that, the self that we most identify with is kind of that egoic part of ourselves that really is a very small piece. So we have to also recognize our smallness in the face of God. And we can know more and more as we recognize that we know nothing. And whenever we feel stuck in life, I think we can be pretty sure we've become too attached to our particular interpretation of truth. And no amount of problem solving is going to help us until we first shake our rigid way of perceiving. One of my favorite stories illustrating a paradigm shift in perception is from the beginning of a little book on personal effectiveness. It's like a really old book, maybe from 30 or more years ago, by a guy named Price Pritchett. I don't even know if he's out there in the world doing anything, but he put out a little series of these little booklets. This one was entitled U2, as in Y-O-U number 2. And I didn't read a lot of his work, but I loved this little description of watching a housefly bashing itself to death trying to get outside through a screen window. And as he described it, it's clear all of its limited housefly senses told it that straight ahead was the most direct route to freedom. It could see it, it could smell it, it could practically taste it. Yet the more it tried, the more beaten and battered it became. And if only the fly could have seen the bigger picture and, just turned itself around 180 degrees to go the opposite direction, it could have flown easily through an open door. Just zip, zip, zip right around the corner. Boom, there's that door. And that's often how we operate in life. We become fixated on whatever appears the most obvious from the perspective of our physical senses. And then we then fall into assumptions that this isn't just the best, but the only truth. And then we start judging any people who don't share it. And we also remain stuck in our own little self-created prisons. So anytime we feel torn between two and only two choices, where something gained must be at the expense of some other side losing, we can become certain that we've been trapped by our narrow-mindedness, because there are always more options. We might need to relax the ego's need to feel in control and be right in order to find these other options, maybe turning away from everything we thought we knew for certain. But the options are invariably there, as surely as that open door is right behind the housefly. And this week in the written materials, there's an exercise for freeing your mind from all of its rigid grooves in order to find that open door lying just out of sight. I'm not going to go into it here because I don't think we'll have enough time. And it's the kind of exercise that I think you'll get more out of by giving it a bit of time on your own. So do check it out. For those who are new, or for any of you who are new-ish and haven't yet explored the additional materials here. Did my husband just put a fly on my face? He did. He put a fly on my face. There's the fly. I just noticed. I'm sorry. My husband's in the garage being my tech person. He goes under the name of presentation. Looks like me, but actually there's a little fly there. I just noticed it. All right, where was I? For those of you who haven't been to the additional materials, there's a fairly lengthy written lesson that goes along with each of these live classes. And we put up the recordings of the live classes. There's also the occasional meditation that we actually did in the sound studio. So it has a nice sound quality and music bed that you can listen to over and over. And the way you get to those additional materials is to first go to my website, lynnwoodland.com. It's on a hidden page. So go to the menu bar and look for the Miracles course option. Click on that and go drop down to whatever week we're in the month. This would be the third week in January. Go to that week and then enter this code. Get your pen out. The code for this week is number 1, number 9, capital S, capital N. Number 1, number 9, capital S, capital N. And I'll give it again at the end of the session. And that's how, and once you're in, you'll have access to that page indefinitely. Just hang on to the code. You can always go back to it again and again. So last week, I talked about the void state as being about emptiness, but also paradoxically as being a state of fullness, of pure potential. As in Buddhism, where absolute emptiness and fullness are really synonyms for one another. And if we don't resist the void, but instead go deeply enough into its apparent emptiness to find the hidden fullness, we can't help but come in contact with something ineffable and mysterious. And we might have had these experiences, for example, when we go deeply into meditation, where emptiness becomes full of something that maybe we feel, but we just, something unknowable. And these spiritual experiences leave many of us wanting to define and explain them, to put a little frame around them. And I think it's really the natural condition for the human mind to be frustratingly unable to fully know the ultimate truth, but far too complex to ever stop wanting to. I think that is part of our human condition and purpose, that to always aspire to greater knowing of the oneness of God. We desperately want to make God comprehensible, to put some recognizable face to the unknowable, and really create some small sense of order in an overwhelming universe. Really, that's what our ego is all about. We want to, map out our own little piece of order with this really kind of small part of ourself that, is our conscious personality. And in our striving for understanding, we humans, we've created countless paths to God in the form of our religions and spiritual practices. And I think of every religious path as being kind of like a picture frame that we hold up against the sky. Some of us have really big frames, some of us have little frames. And of course, that the act of doing that just really brings a particular piece of sky perfectly into focus. But the sky is always different. Not only is the frame different, but the sky is different. So for some, we might see a little patch of blue in our frame. For others, we might see a dark starry night, or rain and lightning, or a rainbow, or just really flat, unbroken gray. And we're all seeing the truth, even when these truths appear to be so contrasting. Now, as surely as the act of focusing in this way does bring us closer to one aspect of God, it just as effectively blinds us to others. So, conundrum here. How can we reap the benefits of a spiritual path without succumbing to its limitations? Well, maybe a start is to see it for what it is. It's one of many slants on the truth. It's packaged and framed and filtered to make it more accessible to some people, even as it is less accessible to others. And what we see through these frames of our religious paths will never be the whole picture, even though they might be a very helpful picture. So to pursue true knowing, we must from time to time just loosen our grip on even our most cherished beliefs, which, hey, that's kind of a tall order. The very nature of focus that each path requires just calls forth this heartfelt commitment, a personal investment in one's own truth. It's really interesting. Maybe some of you saw the lengthy 12-minute clip of people inside the Capitol building, and there was the image of the shaman guy and a few others. They were saying a prayer. And when I listen, some people could really see that in horror, like here they are, just, ruining this sacred space. And, I kind of felt some of that too. But at the same time, I really felt like these guys, their whole hearts were in their prayer. They really believed what they were doing. And shaman guy was just calling in the love and the light and God and Jesus. And I've personally felt that he was in a high vibrational state, and we never know what's going to happen when we really do align with light and love. For himself, it meant he got arrested pretty quickly. When we're calling in love and light, we really align with the divine's mission, not our egos. But I could tell that they really had that heartfelt commitment that every spiritual path really calls forth in a follower, and it's a personal investment in one's own truth. So it's not an easy thing to hold our spiritual philosophy lightly. It's a challenging thing. I think it really is part of the path of true mastery as opposed to simply being a religious practitioner. You know, it's as challenging as not taking ourselves too seriously. You know, our ego kicks and screams against such things, or we're not getting attached to the things we most desire, or letting go of our quote unquote ego. Like, get your ego out of it. I mean, it's kind of a cliche that we hear from time to time, but it's really a lifelong challenge to do that, to take the ego and put it to the side. So ultimately, a true desire for knowing, as opposed to a more egoic craving for identity, again comes back to a willingness to embrace paradox, that recurring theme that comes up again and again when we're talking here about the path to enlightenment. It also comes up quite a bit in quantum physics, if you do any diving into that whole area. Juggling mind-boggling contradictions, whether to comprehend the nature of matter, which changes completely when it's small enough to be out of sight, or just to comprehend the nature of God. These things require a paradigm shift in perspective, which can be just impossibly difficult as a fly trying to bash through a screen window, or astonishingly easy, as easy as just turning around. So where we're going next in this lesson, and I'm, kind of talking a lot kind of up here in the esoteric realm. We're going to bring this down to earth and into our personal lives. But where we're going next involves really relaxing the frame of our assumptions, our teachings, our reactions to our teachings, our need for spiritual identity, to just relax all of those to meet the mind-boggling paradox of God as if for the first time, and to discover what God is to us in this moment. So, we put an infinite number of faces and names to God. We call it higher self, the great spirit, goddess, the Holy Spirit, the universal source, energy, light, guardian angels, Gaia, the earth spirit, Jesus, Buddha, and many, many, many other names or angels. And certainly, the ineffable nature of spirit is greater than any one face we can put to it. However, there's value in finding our own personal doorway into God. There's an inscription on a Chinese stone figure of Buddha that's dated way, way back to 746. And it puts this really succinctly. It says, "The highest truth is without image. If there were no image at all, however, there would be no way for truth to be manifested." End of quote. I think that's a great way of putting it. And I know a lot of very devoutly spiritual people who take offense at the very word God, because they believe the word means things that don't fit their spiritual framework. But in all the ways the word God is used, I just wonder, can it ever be more than just a hopelessly inadequate shorthand for something so big that only the very shortest of words will do? That some people prefer reversed, as in dog. I know a lot of people who love their dogs way more than they love God. So if you have a very well-constructed concept of God and spirituality, whether it comes from what you've been taught, or a reaction against what you've been taught, or what you've come to on your own, consider just letting it go, even if just for, a few moments, even if just for, the next week, to give yourself an opportunity to have a new experience of God, to let God maybe speak to you in a whole different way. So we're going to do a meditation around this now. And I'll invite you all to just get comfortable in your seats and close your eyes. just take some deep breaths and let your attention turn inward. Breathe in relaxation. Just breathe out any tiredness in your body, any tension. Just breathe your imagination open, your mind relaxed and open. And just review your intellectual thoughts and concepts of God and Spirit, all your impressions of the divine. Just review them. Don't interpret them or analyze them. Just let them move through your mind. And let them go. Just let them go. We'll put them to the side for right now. And now just invite random images of the divine to pass through your mind. And invite images, concepts that feel the most comforting and emotionally appealing to you to float into view. Let your imagination play with this. Play with different images of spirit to find what represents spirituality most purely and powerfully for you right now. Let go of all of your ideas and stereotypes about God. Just see what feels good, what feels right. Does it feel best to picture spirit in a male or female form, or neither? Does God take on any kind of human form, or animal form, or angelic form, or energy form? And just put aside what you believe to be right and simply see what God brings the greatest comfort. Is it most comforting to feel God as something external or something within? Do you see Jesus or Buddha or Mother Mary or another well-known spiritual figure whose names we may all know? Do you see an angel or a being of light? Do you see pure energy, pure light, or a figure that has a particular age, such as a child being, or an old wise figure, or something else altogether different? Just let yourself be drawn to a representation rather than deciding upon one. So the right one for you right now is the one that has the most positive emotional voltage to it. The one that gives you the biggest lift and the most comfort. And imagine that the unknowable magnitude of all that is coming to you in exactly the form that best serves your growth at this time. And if an image of God comes to you that doesn't feel right, just send it away. Know that that's all in your power. Just send it away and call in the one that is the best fit right now. And when a vision or a sense of God comes to you and feels just right, Take some time to simply be in the presence of your God and allow it to heal you and guide you and love you. Let it tell or show you why it's come to you in this form and what its special gift to you is. And when you're ready, just take a couple of deep breaths and bring yourself back to a normal waking state, feeling refreshed and alert, grounded all the way back. And I'm not going to open it for sharing quite yet because there's something else I want us to get into, and then we might need to have more in-depth sharing. First off, just imagine God came to you in the form it did. Because there is something you can receive or learn from this facet of God that perhaps you couldn't from any other form. That this form came to you very purposefully. So spend the week opening to what this might be. Imagine that this expression of God is with you as you go about your day and with you at night as you fall asleep. If there is any particular requests you have of God, just put them to this face of God that's come to you today. And, if you have a question for God, just take it into your sleep time with you. And just let this aspect of God be your first awareness as you wake up. And you don't need to know anything about this face of God as you do this. Simply be open. Just immerse yourself in this particular facet of God and let it work its magic on you. Let it do what it's come to do. Heal you, teach you, transform you. But I want to go in a little bit of a different direction now with God. Because for a lot of us, there's a darker figure that lies beneath the surface of our consciousness. And it's different from our conscious, chosen view of spiritual reality. And I'm not talking about images of Satan and evil that might be part of our religious upbringing, but rather our fearful images of an all-powerful force that isn't purely benevolent. Our early religious training might have taught that God is wrathful and unforgiving, or early in life we may have looked upon the sadness and cruelty of the world and decided God is uncaring. We might have had a lot of experiences in childhood that life is harsh and we're not safe, and we are taught that there's a God, and somehow we put these together in our childlike minds in a way that says God is not going to keep me safe. And even if you think about it, the benign image of Santa, who doesn't think of Santa as benign? Good old Santa, he just loves all the children, he gives away presents. But he also has this other side to him, that kind of scary side of always knowing if we've been naughty or nice as children, and he's going to punish us with switches and coal if we've been naughty. Think about that. Think about that. We teach children this lovely, Santa character who's going to judge us and give us coal instead of the toys we wanted. It's kind of creepy when you think of it. And these learned images, along with elements of our parents who were the gods of our childhood, as well as other early influences, all combine into not our chosen idea of God, but our fear of God, a fear that remains semi or sometimes completely unconscious and really has a lot of power over us. It remains down below the surface of our awareness, but it has a way of, steering the ship, even though it's out of sight and it's not necessarily based on our conscious choices. And this is when we find ourselves frustrated that all of our efforts to go forward are making no headway. And once these, darker God figures are revealed, their power is just really significantly diffused. I'll give you an example of this from my own life, because we're going to do a process here where we're going to completely disempower these darker gods. I became aware of an aspect of my own dark god in the midst of leading one of my 5-day intensives. I was working with one of the participants to help her just recognize and transform her limiting image of God. And as I was working with her, I realized that I myself often joked about an evil trickster God, this evil trickster God who enjoys having a good laugh at my expense. And while I said this out loud in humor, deep down, it really wasn't a joke. I really did carry this image of God with me and had some real fear that when things were going well, whoosh, the rug was going to get pulled out from under me in some completely unexpected way. Now, as I understand spiritual law, it's that the universe really does give us what we love. And we demonstrate what we love by where we give our attention. So God will show up as we envision it. And in my case, from time to time, God would show up as an evil trickster God, just watching for an opportunity to have this cruel joke at my expense. And as I acknowledged really for the first time the power of this image, I then had more of an ability to transform it. And what I did, I kept a lot of its basic character intact, that of a bait and switch jokester with a sense of humor. But I turned it into a benevolent trickster God who makes fun of my negative expectations by delivering something really wonderful just when I'm preparing for the worst. And, the more I work with this figure, the more I create for myself a therapeutic double bind. That means, no matter what, even if you try and sabotage yourself, things are going to go well. So, in other words, when things are going well, I can give thanks to God. And when things are going poorly, I've set up the subconscious expectation that I will be tricked into things going well again, in spite of myself. In fact, I would say my husband came to me in exactly that way. After I'd been working with my benevolent trickster God, because I'd had so many bad dates in a row, so many crappy relationships. It's like, no matter who I pick, it's always the wrong guy, really wrong guy. And after 3 of these in a row, kind of in quick succession, I said, I give up. I'm not going out on any more dates. I give up on men. I'm just going to be single for the rest of my life, be a little nun, be a little spiritual nun. And I just happened to be, on my way to a meeting. I had a meeting scheduled with a friend. I was going to help her with her business. And I was talking to her about, I'm giving up on men. I'm done with it, not doing this again. And she actually had the opposite experience as me. She always had the right partner in her life. Even the ones that didn't work out were perfect. And when one left, the next one showed up in the perfect way, and he'd be just right for that moment. She was in a long-term relationship that was going very well. And so she just gave me some advice. She said, no, this isn't the time to give up. This is the time to just go out and date, and just take it lightly. Don't be so serious about it. Just, do it with a sense of humor. And, I thought, well, following my own counsel with relationships had never worked. So maybe I ought to follow the counsel of someone who, is really better at this than me. Can't hurt. So I went home. I got on Match.com. I'd done that before. That's how I met all my loser boyfriends, and or bad dates. And I typed in all my criteria, and typically that meant there was nobody there. Nobody. Within miles and miles. This time, the person who came up very first, was guess who? My husband, who put a fly on my face tonight. And there was nothing terrible about his profile. Could not find a single terrible thing. So I decided, I don't know if you've ever done Match.com, you can just click a little wink. It's like the minimal commitment, just a little wink. I did that. I couldn't write a note. I just hoped he would never respond. He responded immediately, almost to the effect of, "Oh my God, where have you been all my life?" You're like, "I've been looking for you forever." And our first, and our first meeting, we found out that even though we live in Minnesota, we grew up in the same area. We worked in the same office building like 30 years earlier. It was crazy, crazy. And, we were engaged within 6 weeks and married within 6 months. Never looked back. It was just like instant. So I felt like that was absolutely my benevolent trickster God. That's how powerful changing some of these subconscious, myths are. And that's what we're all going to do now. So, if you have any kind of patterns like that in your life, get ready. Something's really going to shift here. So close your eyes again for a moment. And just take some deep breaths. Turn your attention inward. And it might be even kind of creepy, scary to think of your inner dark God. Yeah, what might that look like? But just take this moment to check it out. What form do you imagine the dark God of your fears take? Is there a God inside of you waiting to judge you or punish you or trick you? Just see what's there when you look into your own little, dark closet inside. Even those of us with the highest of spiritual beliefs, they still have this little inner dark God that comes from our childhood, our upbringing, the way we were treated by our parents, that all-powerful voice inside. And see what kind of face this inner dark God wears in your imagination. How does it show up? What does it look like? How does it sound? How does it feel? And knowing that just bringing this dark God out of the closet, out of hiding, is taking away some of its power. So that's the first step. Just turning the lights on, bringing it out in the open, to be completely, fully seen and revealed. That takes away some of its power right there. And now, in the same way I did, see if you can find a way to transform this dark figure in your imagination. See if you can find a way to turn it into a friend and a helper. And keep as much of its character intact as you can. But change it just enough so that it's now on your side. And it's working to your advantage. It's working for you instead of against you. And just play with that in your mind for a bit. See if you can turn this troublesome God into a helper. Because sometimes even the nastiest of ogre gods can become a friend when they're working for us, and they're turning all their power to our advantage. So see what that might look like. And when you've got that in mind, just, for fun, compare the image of God that came to you in the earlier meditation to your helper, friend, transformed dark God. Just notice how they're similar or different. And if they're different, just be aware of what each has that the other doesn't. How they each may hold something really important that you need. And if they blended into one, what might that look like? What might that one be? And then take a deep breath and open your eyes again. Take another moment. I want to remind everybody that whatever organization got you here is where you need to give a donation for tonight. And I always suggest really making the donation, part of the spiritual work, like checking in with your inner voice, your inner guidance, your inner knowing, to find an amount that in some way gives value to what you want to shift in yourself, to the transformation you want to see in yourself. Because, when we give money, matching not just what we think we got, but what we want to get, it really helps bring the spiritual work down to earth. And, I'm doing this as my service now to organizations, nonprofits that haven't been able to have a lot of classes during COVID. I'm doing it to support as my giveaway. And it's important to support your spiritual center. So please do that. There should be a donate option on the website that got you here. Just check that out and do that. And I want to mention, you can find out other things I'm doing on my website, but lynnwoodland.com. But I want to mention in particular, I've been doing a series of events with my incredibly brilliant rocket scientist cousin, who has developed this technology that's so radically different that I believe it is truly going to change the world. It's an artificial intelligence that is the antidote to a lot of big tech. The evils of big tech, it's the antidote to it. I think it's going to solve a lot of the world's problems as it reaches its fulfillment, which is probably going to be in the next couple of years or less. And he's quite a futurist and visionary. And I've been hosting him on some just chats about the future, and they've been quite fascinating. They're free. They're open to anyone who'd like to attend. They're on, the next one is going to be Sunday evening at the same time, I believe, like same time as this class. If you're interested, if you'd like to participate in that, just send me an email, lynn@lynnwoodland.com. I'm very easy to reach, lynn@lynnwoodland.com. Also, feel free to just write to me, let me know what's going on. Some of you do that. I love hearing from you. Sometimes I'm busy and, emails just go by so fast. I have a little bit of an ADD brain. So I'll often read things and even think I responded and, I haven't yet. So don't take it personally if you don't hear from me. If you need to hear from me and I don't respond, I always tell people I respond well to nagging. So just write to me again. Like, I didn't hear from you, Lynn. I didn't hear from you. Did you read it? Did you see it? I'm really good with that. I appreciate it. But if you'd like to join in on Sunday, please do it. It's fascinating. He's an amazing person, quite inspiring. And if you have any fears about the future, oh my gosh, you've got to hear him talk about a more optimistic approach to it all. So, Michelle, you emailed me today? I'm not sure I saw it. Thank you. I will check right now.
I did. Thank you.
Well, now you know. Just keep reminding me. So I think that's enough for today, and we conclude our week of just really going within next week, and then it's going to be all about relationships, which will be a whole different thing. So I love and bless you all until I see you again. Namaste. Have a lovely week.